The Industrial Revolution in England, How Machines and Sheep Changed People's Lives. Hello, friends. Today, I want to tell you about something that completely transformed the world, the Industrial Revolution in England. I drive a Toyota Corolla 2008 myself and don't usually dive into history, but I stumbled across this topic recently and thought, wow, what a turnaround that was. Picture this: people used to live quietly, working the land, and then, bam! England became the first country where machines started doing everything instead of people. But not everyone was thrilled, some even joked that sheep ate people. What's that all about? How did it start, and what came of it? England, the first to embrace machines. I always thought industry was a modern thing, like factories with robots. But it turns out it all kicked off back in the 18th century, and England was the first to jump in. In my head, I see old houses, horses, carriages, and then suddenly, machines, factories, smoke. England was the big boss of the world back then, rich, powerful, all thanks to figuring out how to make stuff with machines instead of hands. But here's the catch: while some cheered for progress, others grumbled that machines were ruining their lives. They even said England was a place where machines ate people. I didn't get it at first. What's this about sheep? Then it clicked: it's about how everything changed. So, I decided to dig deeper. What was this revolution? How did it start? And why did England become so awesome? Why England? Wealth and colonies. Let's start with why England took the lead. I figured it's down to two big things. First, they had tons of colonies: India, Hong Kong, Ceylon, parts of Africa, and more. My neighbor once said, the English grabbed half the world. And he's right. They hauled in spices, cloth, gold from those places and sold it everywhere. It's like having a huge garden and then taking over your neighbor's plots too. Second, their industry was top-notch. By the 18th century, they already had factories, machines, and production humming along. I read that England made more cloth than anyone else in the world back then. My grandma used to say her mum sewed with English wool, the best stuff around. But not everyone was clapping for this boom. Some folks in England hated it. Instead of peaceful village life, they got smoke, noise, and factories. Did sheep eat people? A weird story. Here's where it gets wild. I came across this line: England, the country where machines ate people. At first, I thought it was a joke, but it turns out it started way back in the 16th century with something called enclosures. Landlords figured out, why rent land to farmers when I can graze sheep and sell wool for big bucks? So, they kicked people off the fields, put up fences, and let sheep take over. Newspapers back then drew cartoons: sheep with sharp teeth munching on folks, captioned, "Sheep that ate people." I pictured it: you're living in a village, plowing your field with your dad, and then some rich guy says, "Get out, sheep are moving in." Of course, the sheep didn't literally eat anyone, it's just that farmers lost their jobs and had to move to cities to work in factories. My granddad lived in a village and always said, land is life. Take it away, and you're stuck working for pennies. That's how cities filled up with workers, sparking the machine age. Workers in cities, English versus Indians in the cities. There were tons of workers. I read that folks slaved away on factories for 16 to 18 hours a day for next to nothing. The conditions were awful, cramped, dirty, loud. My buddy works at a factory now, does 8-hour shifts, and comes home wiped out. Imagine 18 hours. But factory owners didn't care. If you didn't like it, someone else would take your spot. Then came trouble: competition from colonies, like India. English workers were cheap, but Indian labor was even cheaper. Suddenly, shops were full of affordable Indian cotton cloth, called calico. My grandma had calico sheets, soft and cozy. But for English weavers, it was a disaster. Their stuff stopped selling, and they went broke. Things got so bad that some workers started riots. They smashed shops selling Indian cloth, burned warehouses, and even stripped ladies wearing calico dresses right on the street. I thought, man, that's intense. But it didn't stop the flood of cheap imports. Machines to the rescue. Tech saves the day. The English didn't give up, they turned to machines. In 1771, a guy named Richard Arkwright, they call him the grandfather of English industry, built the first cotton spinning factory. It was all machine-driven, powered by a water wheel, like a mill but for cloth. I imagined it: water crutit wheel, machines hum, and cloth flies off the line. That was the start of real factories. Then, in the 1780s, James Watt tweaked the steam engine, making it better. Suddenly, you didn't need rivers, factories Mowgli pop up anywhere with coal. I read that northern England, full of fast rivers, turned into one big cotton factory zone. Textile production took off, and soon other industries followed. They built roads to haul all that stuff, the government poured tons of cash into it. My neighbor paved his driveway himself and said, "A good road is everything." Same deal back then. Progress problems, trees, coal, and rebels, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. Early steam engines burned wood, so they chopped down England's forests like crazy. I thought, it's like if we cut all our birch trees for firewood. Fuel ran low fast, so they switched to coal, and coal mining boomed. My dad was a miner and called coal black gold. England rode that wave hard. In 1785, Edmund Cartwright invented a mechanical loom. It made weaving way faster, and cloth got cheaper. I figured, great, everyone wins. Buyers loved it, factory owners too, but weavers? They freaked out, machines stole their jobs. They smashed looms, burned factories, and got dubbed Luddites after Ned Ludd, the first guy to wreck one. My factory buddy grumbles about robots today, same vibe back then. By the early 1800s, Luddites were such a headache that factory owners hired armed guards. Railways, a new wonder and fear. In 1825, England launched its first passenger train from Stockton to Darlington. Newspapers went nuts, smoke will kill everything, forests, rivers, animals, us. I read that and laughed, sounds like my village when they paved the road, stink and noise. But progress won. By the mid-19th century, England was covered in rails. I've ridden trains, fast and comfy, and back then it was a miracle. Historical background: from farmers to factories. It started with enclosures in the 16th century, sheep pushed out farmers. By the 18th century, machines pushed out weavers. In the 19th, England became the workshop of the world, factories, roads, coal. In Russia, we had serfs, then they had steam engines. Economics: how England took over. By the 1800s, England churned out more cloth than anyone, millions of pounds in exports. Colonies gave raw stuff, machines sped it up, coal fueled it. Today, China's the factory king. Back then, it was England. My thoughts: machines, good or evil? I think progress is awesome but scary. Sheep and machines kicked people out, but gave jobs to others. At my buddy's plant, new machines cut staff, but boost output. England showed, change is a chance if you grab it. Conclusion: a revolution that made us the Industrial Revolution in England was about machines, sheep, and people. It turned the country into the workshop of the world. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments.